I have a niece, Olivia. Got a new apartment in Gramercy, the Gramercy Park area. A very expensive for a 400 square foot apartment. She has to walk over Venezuelan immigrants to get into her new apartment. They make noise at night and so forth and so on.
What does the fact that they're Venezuelan have to do with it, you racists? That's Geraldo Rivera. He's got a niece, Olivia. She just moved into an apartment in the Gramercy Park neighborhood of New York City, and she's tripping over Venezuelans. Venezuelans? Well, isn't Venezuela a socialist utopia? Everything that the Democrat Party wants the United States to be? Why would they leave paradise to sleep on a sidewalk in New York so Geraldo's niece Olivia could trip over them on her way to her 400 square foot apartment, for which Geraldo says she pays too much. Pays too much. Well, you want to live in Gramercy Park, it's a very nice neighborhood where you may be murdered, but... And the mayor there, he's going to further defund the police. They're finding new ways to defund the police. We're just going to eliminate overtime for the police, which means, you're going to make less money every year, and that goes actually to your retirement also. So you make less money in retirement, and, makes it less appealing to be a member of the New York Police Department, the NYPD. And also you're going to be, not working overtime. So there'll be fewer police on the street. And therefore, more crimes, and more criminals will get away with their crimes because Democrats had an idea, and this is it. And their ideas usually lead to murder and mayhem and carjacking and looting and arson and destruction because, they're not liberals, they're the left. That's the thing about them. Kind of the funny thing about them. So that's amazing. Yeah, defund the police. And it doesn't all go to Geraldo and his niece Olivia in Gramercy Park in her 400 square foot apartment. No. 400 square foot apartment, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? That's I wonder what she pays. I want to see does it have a view? Does it smell? That's New York City. Yeah, so they're finding new ways to defund the police, and they're doing that because they want to drive people from the NYPD, and they don't want people to enlist to serve in the NYPD because they're anti-police and they're pro-crime and they're pro-criminal. But according to the mayor, who's one of the great disappointments in modern American politics, unlike this woman in Virginia, we'll get to her as well. She's not one of the great disappointments, depending on, maybe if you're her husband, might be one of the great disappointments, depending on your view of things like marriage and fidelity, things like that. But setting that aside, Eric Adams, he says that he needs the money. He needs to steal the money from the police, overtime, and fire department, too. So you may burn to death in your building because, what do you want us to pay, overtime? Come on, get out of here. Because they got to spend a lot of money on the illegal aliens because they're a sanctuary city, and Joe Biden and the Democrats have an open border policy. And our border czar, Kamala, is down there waving in Al-Qaeda and MS-13 and who else you had? The cartels and the child sex traffickers and the smugglers. They're all being waved in by Kamala personally. Is that right? I've seen the video. Looks like Kamala. That's so yeah, they're doing real good stuff. Speaking of New York City, Joe Biden falsely claimed yesterday, he lied about September 11th. And he said that, did he say he was down there the next day? He said he was down the next day. That'd be September 12th, right? And that's a lie. And he lied about that. And then he plagiarized a line because you know what a plagiarist he is. And he plagiarized a line. He stole a line from Hillary Clinton, who also lied about being in New York on 9/11, because if they're talking, they're lying. And and if they were Republicans, they'd be nailed to pieces of wood for the lies that they spread. But because they're Democrats, all the people at the New York Times vote for them instead and fluff them, kind of San Fernando Valley style. It's a remarkable thing. So Joe Biden lying again yesterday. And then he's talking about how on September 11th of 2001, the fighter jet scrambled out of Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. It had taken like 2 days to get to New York. I got to stop for fuel, and hey, I got to pull over. Where's my electric charger? You think we're going to have electric fighter jets? The Democrats going to have electric fighter jets? That's these people. Can I just say these people? They're quite something. So Joe Biden plagiarizing Hillary Clinton, of all people, yesterday, who lied about being in New York on September 11th, 2001. Then Joe Biden lied about being in New York on September 12th of 2001. And when you're a Democrat, none of this matters. It is good to be a Democrat because, kind of like this lady in Virginia, this is how they interact. Meet Susanna Gibson. Susanna Gibson is a Democrat woman, as you might imagine, although today a Democrat named Susanna might be a man, too. So, oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. Got Susanna on my knee. Meet Susanna Gibson, a.k.a., quote, hot wife experience, end quote. Turns out this Democrat candidate who's running for the State House in the Commonwealth of Virginia is a Pornhub, I don't want to say star because that's a stupid word, particularly in this context, but she's a porn, like live porn. She is having sex with, are there any animals or is it all humans? Is it, at least like, hey, 3 men in one day, and send her tips. I think in politics we call that contributions, don't we? Because that's, and then aren't they deductible in some way? You can send her money while watching her live porn show on Al Gore's amazing internet. Peace be upon him. Thanks be to Al Gore. And I want to get to this because some pretty amazing stories there. This thing she'll do for what she calls tips. Like, I think if you're an exotic dancer, like the mother of Joe Biden's granddaughter, then you ask for tips. I think what this woman is doing is not tips. I think it's something else altogether. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that because that's pretty wackadoodle-doo, I got to say. Yes, sir. Your Democrat Party. It's an amazing place to be. So some of the headlines today that I have to share with you and that we will be posting with our stories list of the day, which we will post on the Twitter and the Facebook and the various other platforms. So we got, though, Biden under fire for falsely claiming he was at ground zero the day after 9/11. He lied. Also, Joe Biden giving billions of dollars to the Iranian terrorists because Democrats love terrorists. They gave us the White Knights of the KKK and the Students for Democratic Society and the Weather Underground. They used to be the Weather Men, but then they decided that was sexist, and so they made it the Weather Underground. They couldn't make it the Weather People. They had to make it the Weather Persons. They had to make it the Weather Underground. Sounds more romantic, and then, the things they did. U.S. advances deal with Iran. The Washington Post is very excited about it. To swap prisoners. That's kind of what this lady in Virginia is doing to Susanna Gibson. Her husband's a prisoner, and then these other men are prisoners, and they swap. They do a lot of swapping. So Joe Biden is giving $6 billion to the Ayatollahs in Tehran, and they're going to give the Ayatollah, 5 or 6 Iranians that have been convicted of actual crimes in the United States of America. And then Iran will give us back 5 American hostages that they're holding as hostages. And this will be real good for hostage taking around the world because, Joe Biden loves to help the Ayatollahs in Tehran because Joe Biden and the Democrats are not on our side. You remember the Obama-Biden administration also gave billions and billions, tens of billions to the Ayatollahs so they could build ballistic missiles and spin centrifuges and enrich uranium so they could eventually kill the great Satan, which is us, and the little Satan, which is, of course, the Jews. So the Biden administration allowing the release of $6 billion to Iran, and then Iran will give us our hostages back. Are there our hostages or their hostages? They're American citizens and they're hostages, and the terrorists there are holding them hostage. And if we give them $6 billion, that's $1.2 billion per hostage. So the hostage business has been very, very good to the Ayatollahs. And the Democrats, Obama and Biden, and Valerie Jarrett, let's not forget Valerie Jarrett of the Obama administration, born in Shiraz, Iran. And she's been a very good friend to Iran over the years. Never mind the fact that they're dedicated to the total destruction of Western civilization. And we are their number one target. And then the Jews, their number two target, because, that's the thing with them. And who knows what. So we got that. Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton, he went to Harvard Law School, and then he went to war for the United States of America as an infantryman. And he called it a ransom payment because that's what it is, and we'll get to that. Joe Biden, while in Hanoi, went to something that the White House calls the John McCain Memorial. It's not a John McCain Memorial. That's a lie, or they're really stupid. I've actually been to this memorial in Hanoi and the lake where when I was there at least, there was still the tail of an American aircraft sticking out of the water there. And the commies shot down John McCain around there. And there is a stone plaque there, but it's not a memorial to John McCain. It is a memorial that honors the people that shot John McCain down, the communists who kill everyone and destroy everything. And Joe Biden visited it like it was a solemn occasion, and the commies are all laughing at him and holding their bellies and laughing. And it's true, John McCain's name is on it, but it is not they're just proud of the fact that they shot down a famous guy. His father was a 4-star admiral at the time. His grandfather had been a 4-star admiral. And John McCain eventually became a senator and ran for president and everything. So they're proud of the fact that they shot him down. But it is not to honor John McCain. It's to honor the people that shot him down. Also, Joe Biden in Vietnam, he did all kinds of great stuff while he was there. They put out an ex-post, a picture of John McCain with a Vietnamese communist official, and they thanked the president, right, for the nice visit and their hospitality. Turns out it wasn't the president in the photo. It was another guy, and they explained, well, he's also got glasses and black hair. And they said, and a part in his hair. He's got a part in his hair. So Asia is very confusing to the Biden White House because, everybody's got black hair. A lot of people have glasses. They're bespectacled. And a lot of people part their hair using combs and brushes and things like that. The Biden White House thinks that everybody looks alike over there is what's going on. That's what happened. Also, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, will green light the Biden impeachment this week. That's, hey. Well, we'll see if that actually happens. Today is Tuesday, and I'll believe it when I see it. Let me just say that. I'll believe it when I see it. So, also in Washington, D.C., they've got a story in the Washington Post today. A shaken Washington copes with surging violence. Quote, this is not normal, end quote. No, but the Democrats are making it normal, like violence in the streets and mob political violence and rioting and looting. The many things that they've made normal. Carjacking, they've made normal. They've made child criminals normal. They've made 67 million abortions normal. They've made harvesting the organs normal. They are the left. They are not liberals. These people are not liberals. They're the left. So we've got that going on. The surging violence in Washington. This is not normal. I picked up my Washington Post today. I was like, hey, wait, this is not normal? Well, it's getting there. You guys just keep it up. I got an idea for the Democrats. This is really, just a thought, not a sermon. Stop shooting people. Stop shooting people. Hey, Democrats, stop shooting people with your illegal guns. Speaking of which, the illegal alien in Pennsylvania that stabbed that woman 38 times and murdered her in front of her 2 little children. He is also wanted for murder in Brazil, and then he fled there and came to the United States and was waved in by Kamala Harris at the border. Danilo Cavalcante broke into someone's home last night. The homeowner shot at him 7 times. They haven't found any blood, so it looks like he may not have hit him. But the guy stole a rifle, a .22 caliber rifle, from a homeowner, and he's still on the loose. And now it's a manhunt. They've called in Tommy Lee Jones, which I thought was interesting. Tommy Lee. Yes, sir. Gavin Newsom looking to replace Dianne Feinstein is insulting to black women, but only to black women. Interestingly enough, a new gun tax in California, because that ought to do it. And communist revolutionaries in Chicago, also known as Democrats, burned the American flag outside of a Jason Aldean concert because, it's like Try That in a Small Town is his song. They don't know what a small town is. Let's face it, if you're a member of the Communist Revolutionary Party, you doubtless have an extremely low IQ. But at least you're violent because, the Democrats. So we got that. And we're at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. The Wall Street Journal today also with the headline, a $2 trillion deficit for fiscal 2023. Remember, Joe Biden just said the other day he cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion, but he lies all the time. He lies about where he was on September 11th, and he lies about everything. It's really time that he stepped down as president, past time. But before Joe Biden stepped down, Kamala is waiting in the wings. It's very funny. Who was it yesterday said that Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's impeachment insurance policy. That's pretty funny. All right, let's go to the telephones. We are at 888-630-9625. Let's go to Tony calling from Tampa, Florida. Tony, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
All right, Chris, my man, thank you very much. Here's all I want to say basically is this. If the Democrats would go back to North Korea, we would have a 6.5, 7% GDP across the board.
If all the Democrats would go back to North Korea, then we would have, I'm not sure if there's room for all the Democrats there, but we could try. I'd be willing to pay the airfare, add it to our tab. So if all the Democrats went back to North Korea, we'd have a 7% GDP. You mean if they just stopped legislating and governing and spending, then our economy would be booming.
Yes. What there would be, Chris, private sector economics, right? Pedal to the metal, private sector economics, and that's the best economic system on the planet, and that's what you would get, a 6.5, 7% GDP, easy without them.
Without them. And Joe Biden, I've got to share with you the Wall Street Journal item on the deficit that Joe Biden said. He just said he cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion. He was lying, of course. The Wall Street Journal has a couple of facts that I will share with you. Also, I got so much crazy coming up. It's a good day for the communists in Vietnam and Hanoi running the place. It's a good day for the Ayatollahs in Tehran, who will be getting billions and billions of dollars because Joe Biden is going to pay them to release hostages, which will naturally incite more hostage-taking, which is something we discovered many decades ago, but the left erases all history and all memory of the lessons of the 20th century. And that's why, they pretend that they're libs. Although you see the Revolutionary Communist Party in Chicago burning the American flag in a ceremonial way outside of the Jason Aldean concert. Try that in a small town. And then they're so stupid. I want to get to this story, but they say, we'll try it right in front of your concert. It's like I said, try that in a small town. If you think Chicago is a small town, then, you're dumber than you smell. Honestly. How dumb do they smell? They smell pretty dumb. All right, let me go to the Wall Street Journal today because, they love commies. And our first caller, Tony from Florida, said today, if all the Democrats would just go back to North Korea, put me in mind of the Wall Street Journal piece today. Kim, meaning Kim Jong-un, the communist Chinese leader, who, he lashed his uncle to a pole and had an anti-aircraft gun brought in to shoot him to death in front of a bunch of generals. So they got the message. He's a communist, and that's the kind of stuff that communists do. I haven't erased all memory of the 20th century. I try to keep memories of the 20th century alive. Sort of important, I think. And even earlier centuries. The Democrats, they just want to, keep alive slavery or something, forgetting that they were the slavers. They like to erase that one little piece of history because it's about them. But here's the Wall Street Journal today. Kim rolls toward Russia to meet Putin. North Korean leader traveling by train from North Korea to Moscow. And that's a long train ride. That's a long, long train ride. The Siberian Express. That's pretty amazing. North Korean leader traveling by train makes first trip abroad since 2019. Now, abroad, most people think abroad means you have to go across the ocean or something. Really, it just means crossing a border. If you go to Mexico or Canada, technically, you're going abroad. Yeah, and that's you'd think that the ocean, right? That's what people think. But Kim is headed to Moscow to meet with Putin because what do they have in common? They're communists. And what does that mean? That means they're murderers and criminals. And that's not good for, your garden. Although it is when they turn lots of people into mulch. And then on to the next Wall Street Journal piece today with the headline, a $2 trillion deficit for fiscal 2023 for Democrats following along. That's this year. See, that's AD 2023, AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Washington is girding. We're girding our loins. Are we girding our loins here in Washington? Washington is girding for a spending showdown. I love those spending showdowns in Washington, don't you? Such drama in this city. Who needs Hollywood when we've got Washington? As Republicans and Democrats strategize on how to get more of what they want from a divided Congress. But whatever happens in the political drama, the budget reality. The budget reality? Somebody's talking about the budget reality? Not to forget is that the deficit for the fiscal year that ends this month, they've got a fiscal year. Why don't you just use a calendar year like everybody else? The Gregorian calendar is not good enough for you. You've got, our calendar ends at the end of September, begins the beginning of October. Really? Why? Oh, well, there's very good reason if you form a conga line and wedge your heads into one another's dark and remote locations. So they don't use a normal year, a calendar year. That'd be too simple. So they get rid of that. So that deficit for fiscal year that ends this month is officially projected to be $1.7 trillion. Now, how much is that to you and me? Well, according to the Wall Street Journal today, that's about $13,500 for every U.S. household. That's just the deficit just this year, just Joe Biden. $13,500 out of every household. But really, it doesn't matter because we're not paying for it. It's just, fake drug money. It's crazy. The estimate from the Congressional Budget Office's monthly report for August, and it's even worse than the headline. President Biden was saved from an uglier official figure only because the Supreme Court reversed his extra-constitutional plan to forgive student loans, producing what the Congressional Budget Office calls outlay savings. They've got outlay savings. That like that woman in Virginia that has sex on the internet and is now a Democrat running for office. To reflect the Supreme Court's ruling, that's what the CBO says. Ignore that, and the deficit would be $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Now, that's a lot of money, you see, $1.72 trillion. And the Wall Street Journal ends the piece with, remember when Mr. Biden claimed to have reduced the deficit by $1.7 trillion? That was always a con. But now he can truthfully claim to be the $2 trillion deficit man. Remember Joe Biden? It was only September 5th, just a matter of days ago, that he lied this.
And even with what we've done, unlike the last president, in my first 2 years, all this stuff, guess what?
What?
I cut the deficit $1.7 trillion. Cut the debt $1.7 trillion.
The deficit and the debt are not the same thing, and he didn't cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion unless he was originally planning on having a deficit of $3.4 trillion, and he reduced it by $1.7 trillion, so now it's only $1.7 trillion. The man is not up to the job of being president. He needs to step down. He shouldn't be president of the United States. This man is, boy, what a dimwit, what a numbskull. That's as polite as I can be. And I got to be, because I'm on the radio and stuff, and they got the FCC. Otherwise, I'd tell you what I really think. Just amazing. Yeah. So the Biden administration and their lies, and you heard the idiots clapping there, probably White House staffers. Just amazing. Now, let's get to the next Joe Biden, because there's more Joe Biden to talk about. Joe Biden was in Alaska. He stopped at Elmendorf-Richardson Joint Base. Now, it used to be Elmendorf Air Force Base. And he was there for the 9/11, September 11th, 2001. There were ceremonies in New York City where Kamala went at Ground Zero, but she apparently didn't say anything, which is best. They figured that out. As senator, just don't let her say anything, right? And Dr. Jill Biden, who's not a doctor at all, another lie, she went to the Pentagon where she touched a wreath that was sitting on a tripod, and she looked sincere for a minute. Not sure what she was thinking. Hard for me to say. And you know who went to, what Biden administration official went to Shanksville, Pennsylvania? The second gentleman, that is Kamala's husband, went to Shanksville, where he stood there and looked sincere for a minute, and then he left. Also, before he went to Shanksville to stand there and look sincere for a minute, while Joe Biden was in Alaska, actually, he showed up in Alaska after everything was already done back here. Alaska is 4 hours behind East Coast time. And so there is Doug Emhoff. Doug. Hi, Doug. There's Doug Emhoff, and he's in Shanksville. And they sent him because nobody knows why, to tell you the truth. But there he is. And I can tell you, before he went to Shanksville yesterday, you know what he did? He went to Georgetown. He lives at the vice president's residence, naturally, because his wife is the vice president, on Massachusetts Avenue, Gesundheit. And he got in the armored caravan, the motorcade, and he went to Georgetown, and he climbed the Exorcist steps. He walked the Exorcist steps, from the movie The Exorcist, and they're there in Georgetown, and there's a plaque there commemorating the Exorcist steps. And if you look on Google Earth, it identifies the Exorcist steps, the location of the Exorcist steps. And Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, went to the Exorcist steps and walked the Exorcist steps, and then he went to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to commemorate 9/11. I'm guessing he was probably trying to get in touch with his inner Satan. What do you think? The devil, Christ Lord compels you, and, crazy. Now, the author of The Exorcist and the writer of the movie The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty, was a friend of mine and his lovely bride, Julie, and we were there when my best girl and I went with the Blattys, Bill Blatty and Julie Blatty, when the city unveiled a plaque commemorating the Exorcist steps. And there is a plaque there, a bronze plaque on the wall at the bottom of the steps to commemorate the Exorcist steps. And that house is still there. I don't think I'd want to live in that house. But why did he go to I think, they've got after-school Satan Club, the Democrats do all over the country, and the Washington Post approves. But that's what he did, all right? And that's pretty weird. I got to say, that's kind of a weird thing. Inner Satan getting in touch. All right, let's go to Joe Biden in Alaska, because that's where he spent September 11th, because he had to hang out with the commies, right? And we'll get back to his Vietnam stupidity, because there's more stupidity from Vietnam, because this guy shouldn't be president. All right, here's Joe Biden in Alaska, September 11th, and he's not telling the truth here. It turns out C-SPAN has him on the Senate floor on September 12th, 2001, giving a lame-brained, incoherent speech and being himself. And so here's Joe Biden lying about being in New York City the day after the attacks of September 11th.
Never forget.
Never forget.
Never forget.
Where you were.
We never forget.
3 times.
Each of us, each of those precious lives stolen too soon when evil attacked. Ground Zero in New York. And I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand.
Yeah. Except Joe Biden was not at Ground Zero the next day. He's lying. And it's funny that he says never forget 3 times. Do you think it was in the teleprompter 3 times? Because he is as smart as a poodle. Even CNN, fact check, : they love their colons. Biden falsely claims he was at Ground Zero, quote, the next day, end quote, after 9/11. And even they had to say, I think they're turning on him because they know they need to replace him. In a speech to service members and first responders on the anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. Now, the first responders in Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, I don't think they responded to Ground Zero, but okay, 22 years later. But okay, CNN is playing along. President Joe Biden falsely claimed he was at Ground Zero the day after the Twin Towers fell in Manhattan. Biden, returning from a whirlwind trip to Asia, said in his Monday remarks at a military base in Alaska, I join you in this solemn day to renew our sacred vow to never forget, right? And then he goes on and he says, I was there the next day. But even CNN has to say, no. Asked Monday night about the claim, the White House provided a photo and the article showing that Biden, then a senator for Delaware, toured Ground Zero on September 20th. September 20th. That's 9 days later. So he is a big fat liar. And he really needs to step down because he's an idiot. Here he is. He's just a complete nut. And he just says things that aren't true. And it's no big deal.
Ground Zero in New York. I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell.
Oh, the old gates of hell thing. Where have I heard that before? Because that sounds familiar. You may remember that Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton, who was Secretary of State under the Obama-Biden administration, when the U.S. government bombed more countries than at any time since World War II. And our chief diplomat was Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton. And she also was not in New York on September 11th, 2001. She also lied about it, and it sounded like this.
I was in New York City on 9/11 as one of the 2 senators. I will defeat ISIS. I will protect America.
She's lying, and the crowd went wild, and she wasn't in New York on September as one of the 2 senators. Well, I wasn't in New York. I was in New York as one of the 2 senators. You know, you need really semantic pathologists to dismantle and reassemble the things that these leftists say, because they don't know the difference between lying and the truth. They really don't. Telling the truth, don't need that so much. And honestly, the truth would do just as well, but they prefer the lie. And then the White House yesterday caught in the lie. Yeah, well, he went there on September 20th. You know, he didn't want to get in anybody's way. Hillary Clinton then went on CNN with Fredo Cuomo. Remember Fredo? He was, they're all gropers, right? Aren't they all gropey McGrope-faced people? His brother had to leave the governor's mansion because he was groping too many women, and then we found out that Fredo was gropey McGrope-faced. Could be the steroids. It's hard to say. Hillary Clinton talking to Fredo.
Remind people where you were on 9/11 and what your earliest memory is of that day.
I got to the Senate, and by the time I got there, the Senate was being evacuated.
I thought you were in New York on 9/11. Didn't you say you were in New York on 9/11 as one of the two senators? And then talking to Fredo, she used a line that Joe Biden stole yesterday.
We landed at LaGuardia, we took a helicopter, and we circled over Ground Zero. And I cannot imagine anything that looked more like the gates of hell.
The gates of hell. So Joe Biden, well-known plagiarist, poached the gates of hell, lied that he was there the next day, he wasn't. Hillary Clinton lied that she was there that day, she wasn't. You know, you probably shouldn't trust people that lie like this. At least you're not married to them, because imagine being married to liars. People who just lie instead of, hey, the truth would work better. I prefer the lie.
And looking at the building, I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell.
Yes, sir. All right, let's go back to the phones. The second gentleman. What a stupid title. Kamala's husband, living in the vice president's residence. Yesterday, before being dispatched to Shanksville to stand there, he went to Georgetown to the Exorcist Steps. For what reason, no one knows. Let's go to John, calling from Washington, D.C. John, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you, Chris. I just thought it was an interesting history that you had with the Exorcist Steps, and I just wanted to fill you in. My son rode 4 years at Georgetown on the crew team, and they would finish every practice with 20 sets of the Exorcist Steps. They had to run up the steps, 75 steps from bottom to top, and they would have to run up the steps and then around the block. And I don't know what block that is. And they weren't allowed to run down because it was too dangerous. But
is that right? Around the block, to run up 20 times. That's quite a workout. I've certainly gone up and down the steps a number of times myself. Yeah, 75 steps. Why Emhoff went, no one knows.